Hello friends, welcome back to a new video. In this one I'll be setting up February in Project B, doing a dark, romantic, maybe gothic rose theme. And I have a lot of thoughts on this one, so let's jump right into it, starting with the cover page, which is actually the source of my grievances when it comes to this theme. For one reason and one reason only, which is this is the only painted illustration in this entire setup. Well, only painted rose, so that in my head doesn't really make it cohesive in the grand scheme of things, but the theme ended up, nice, and I thought my friend would hate it, but she was actually a fan. And I don't know if that was like the collective reaction because she was looking at it all at once, but anyway, this theme took 180. Actually, at this point, this theme took like 360 degrees from the original plan. I'll go back in our chat history and put the image on the screen of the original inspo that my friend sent me, which I immediately told her, listen, there is absolutely no way that I am capable of translating that into a paper form. So let's do something different and rethink this inspo. It mainly had, roses in glass, acrylic, boxes, layered. There's a lot of dimension and shadow. And at that point, I wasn't skilled enough, and I still am not, absolutely. So I went on in Pinterest and I gathered, inspo images. And I don't know why I thought those were more approachable or achievable, because spoiler alert, they were not, as you can tell by the amount of time I spent mixing the color for the rose, adding all sorts of color. At this point I actually have no idea what went into this rose or the leaves or the branches. I'm showing you the colors, and that's the only way I know what colors went into this. Maybe I got ahead of myself, but on the cover page, I decided on this illustration, which I'm going to have on the screen. And as you're going to see in a few, it looks nothing like the original, maybe just the basic shape. I mixed this rose red color, and my struggle stemmed from the fact that I was trying to match it to a rose sticker that I had, and that one was probably done with watercolors, the original illustration and such. So it had a lot of variants and a lot of shades. Sometimes it leaned to pink, other times it leaned to orange. So it was really confusing to me. And at that point, I had no idea what color theory even was. So I wasn't even, trying to use that. So we got to this shade. And I don't know if it's just the brand of paints that I was using, but this color doesn't really look nice on black paper on its own. It's gonna have a redemption arc in a few, but for now, as you're looking at it, I don't like it. Don't know if you do, but personally I don't. So that's that. I was adding the base shade and then adding shadows and blending that in between, and then adding highlights, quote unquote, and blending that in between. It looks like one giant blob. I don't know if you see that, but I do at this point. And then the angle I used doesn't really help things. Once I was done with the rose, I did the leaves, and again, I have absolutely no idea what green I used. Probably like a medium green, deep green, one of the classic greens straight out of the tube, because I haven't learned the art of mixing my own greens when I was doing this illustration. We're actually gonna skip right ahead to the next step. This is where the redemption arc comes into play. Because I hated this so much while I was painting it, I just turned off the camera and tried to fix it, ended up redeeming it a bit, and then thankfully I captured the next thing on camera, which is I added gold outlines to everything, and that breathed life into it. It took it from a weathered, decaying, ugly rose to somewhat of a nicer illustration. It is beautiful. I used gold shimmer watercolors. I love this gold, I've used it a lot, and then a very small detail brush, and I outlined everything. All the singular petals, the leaves, the branches. As you can see, I ended up doing the twigs and branches and all the other stuff in this grayish color, and I actually have no idea how I mixed that. I cannot remember, and I unfortunately didn't note it anywhere, but this gray is a prominent feature in this setup. I really love this footage. I love how the gold is captured through the camera. It is beautiful. So this illustration is beautiful, but only because of the gold and only at this angle. We're gonna have even more issues with the cover page because this theme really stumped me. I'm not used to doing stuff like this, and I didn't know what to do with it, which usually doesn't end up with, you know, satisfying results. It's still beautiful. I still pulled it out somehow, but the cover page is my least favorite, if you haven't noticed. I found this beautiful font on Pinterest, and it actually had roses on it, and I was, you know, crazy enough to think for a singular second that I was gonna illustrate those, but I didn't. You actually don't see me letter it on the cover page. I don't know what happened to that footage, but I ended up buying these nail art rose stickers, and I thought these were perfect because they are small to be used for the headers and such, and I didn't mind the shininess because I'm gonna use stickers somewhere else. So I had a black pack and a red pack, and I used the red one here. For the monthly log, I also made things complicated for myself because at this point, I didn't know that I actually could draw straight lines pretty well. So I was trying to use my glass dip pen with the gold shimmer to do the outlines. And, you know, the glass dip pen hardly and with difficulty picks up any paint, no matter what I'm using, and then using a ruler with that is a recipe for smudges, which is exactly what happened. So the calendar's outline is really faint and uneven and has a lot of smudges, but character, right? I ended up doing the same font for the initials for each day of the week up top in very large letters, and you can see me here lettering them actually using this reddish warm, maybe a pinky toned gray. This on its own is not that, you know, interesting, but then when I go ahead and outline it with gold, it really pops and stunning. The gray and the gold look so good together. I'm in love, and I love this font. This setup in particular was spread over multiple days, probably even weeks, because I was just so undecisive and I didn't know what to do with it, and I was really stumped about it actually. So in one of the shopping sprees my friend and I did, we ended up ordering these rose stickers that are in a black and in a red. So I ended up using those. I wasn't planning to because I don't know how to use stickers well, but in this setup I relied on stickers heavily. This is probably my crash course on how to use stickers. So we are actually going to use the black stickers here. They are very large, as you can see. So what I ended up is choosing the ones that I like and then laying them around the calendar. And I made a guideline with the pencil of where I'm gonna cut, and then, you know, cut them with an X-Acto knife, adjusting if needed. And once I was sure I liked that, you know, peeled the backing and stuck them to surround the calendar and fill out the page, and it ended up looking very beautiful. My main issue with stickers usually is the shininess, and it doesn't really look that great from certain angles, especially on camera and such, but it still looks really great and I like it. The rest of the theme I really love. As I said, my main issue stems from the cover page and how it doesn't really mesh and match with the rest of the spreads. There are, you know, common elements, but I made sure that the stickers were layered how I wanted them to be. So I actually took a reference image, sent it to my iPad so that I can, you know, make sure that the stickers are in the place that I want them, and, you know, I can peel them back up and put them down and such. And then I was crazy enough to decide to number this calendar with a tiny brush and gold paint because I didn't want to introduce a different gold. So I was crazy enough to do that, and somehow they look okay. The last touch to this spread is actually using the nail art rose stickers. I think I used the red ones also here, but I just, chose the ones that I liked and then stuck them somewhere on the letters. I did have a reference because the original font I copied had those roses. I just decided not to draw them because they were tiny. Now we will be working on the monthly log dashboard, quote unquote. It is a very simple but really beautiful double spread that has just 2 logs, one for finances and one for event. And I am starting with lettering the headers on a spare piece of white paper. This is 160 sketchbook paper. Which is actually the same one that I have in the actual notebook on the white pages. Anyway, I lettered that or traced it with pencil and then used the gray to color it in, then the gold to outline it and add some spaz and detail. Once I was done with the lettering, I fussy cut around them, and we have more elements coming in, like the script paper, washi paper. This is just a script pattern that I printed on sticker paper. This is my favorite one and I've used it multiple times. I really like it, and yeah, it adds a really nice touch. To create the actual writable area for the sticker backings, I cut these squares of the gray paper and then made a frame on them that has rounded inner corners, if that makes sense. The beauty of this spread is all in the background, and these papers you see here is actually the backing to the sticker backs that I used here. As I said, we got a white one and a black one, and I really loved the design of the packaging, right? Beautiful, and it had roses and it is moody and stunning, so I decided to use it here. Once I was done making the different elements individually, now it's time to glue them together. So I figured out how I wanted them to lay out and then went ahead and stuck them down. This is actually one of my favorite parts of the setup, just because it was so brilliant being able to utilize the sticker backings. And then to add the roses to the headers, on the black image, I used the black or gray rose stickers, and then on the red image, I used the red roses. The only thing I don't like about this red rose pack is it also comes with white roses, and I didn't really need or want those, so I ran out of those very quickly. Now we are getting to the weekly log, and we are starting with the spread partially decorated and made. And what I did is I used those rose stickers that I talked about, but the red ones here, and I did an L shape and like a flipped L shape. So basically put roses down the outer edges with an extra rose at the bottom for the left page and an extra rose at the top for the right page. You see how it looks. And then I ended up cutting the pages in the middle to make some sort of a booklet. I really like the look of it here because it has all the paper colors almost in one layout, except obviously tan, but black and white half and half spread and then the gray in between. Really nice look. So the weekly setup that I went with here is actually inspired by one that I did back in August of 2023, and I'll pop a picture of it, but I really like that, and I thought that was a nice way to incorporate more of the red to tie that element in. And so I used actually watercolors and my biggest issue with this is I was working so hard to match it to the red in the roses, which looks different on every petal and also looks different on the white paper and the black paper. So I was really prissy about it, but at some point I gave up, and as long as it looks nice, it's fine. And there's a lot of variation, but I don't mind that because, as I just said, there's also a lot of variation in the rose petals themselves. So I made 6 rectangles on each side of the page. I honestly don't remember how I measured those, probably using a stencil. And then I also went with inner rounded corners, which is also the shape that I used back in August from the setup that I was inspired by. And then I taped the edges with washi tape and then used watercolors with a large slanted brush. I guess it's the biggest brush that I had, and then I used mostly black and white. I probably mixed in some other colors trying to get a better match, but then in the end I just used the red and the black. And you can see I have a piece of paper at the side of the gray paper. This is like a scrap piece, and I always test the color that I have on that in case I need to adjust it. I do this every time I paint, but especially with watercolors, because you can never tell what is the actual color that you have on the brush until you try it. So I try it on a spare piece, so if I need to adjust it, I'm not gonna face the issue of fixing a spot on the actual painting, which tends to be more difficult with translucent colors. And I also did this with watercolor instead of gouache because back in August, in the spread that I was inspired by, I did use gouache, but I wasn't able to use any gel pens, white or black, so I had to use a silver metallic gel pen that was the only one that worked on the gouache. So this time I used watercolors because I thought it would make a better writable surface. So I did that for all of the pages, but I'm only showing one spread, and then I actually went ahead with gold paint, the same watercolor gold paint, and then I ended up outlining these boxes, and I feel like that pulled it together very nicely. At first I used a very thin brush and I went by so slowly trying to get the thinnest stroke possible, but that actually didn't look nice at all. So I ended up going with a larger brush and making the lines much thicker, and that looked much more beautiful. And here's the pages after I burned the edges of them. Apparently I was in my burn your bujo era because when I was working on this setup, I was also setting up my October 2024 for my own bullet journal, and in that one I also did the burnt edges. Now I wanted to decorate the sides that show where there isn't flowers and there isn't, the paper, the gray paper of the weeklies. I ended up using this lace washi. I thought about using white lace washi on the black side, but I didn't like any of the ones that I had, so I ended up using black. It doesn't really show, and yeah, I just ended up doing that. And then I have these stunning letter stickers, decorative fancy letter stickers. I only had one pack. I couldn't spell February entirely because I needed 2 R's. So this part took a pause until I bought more, and I learned my lesson and bought 3 more extra. Underneath the log, there is obviously the rest of the spread where the roses are. So on the black page, I added a gray page, and that would be like a master to-do list. And then on the white page, I added some script wrinkled paper, and that will be for like a Polaroid or a Valentine's Day spread, decorative memory spread. And then I ended up using nail art stickers. This was actually my introduction to them. I used these gold ones. This is like a singular sheet pack. I got 2, and I really like this. It matches the gold watercolor paint perfectly, and I used it here a lot. I used probably both of the packs, and I always recommend using 2 packs for a full spread. And then I used more nail art stickers of the roses and also some illegible or unreadable script just to add a nice touch. I ended up adding also the 14th and a small red heart on the Valentine's Day memory capturing spread. After that, we are getting to the last spread, which is going to be the monthly review and also an extra spread. And I went with a simple matching layout that is, alternated. So decoration and the header up at the top for the review page on the left with black roses, and then decoration and the header at the bottom with red roses for the opposite spread, which is going to be a bingo board. So I started with laying out the stickers. These are leftovers from the calendar page, and so as the red ones are going to be leftovers from the weekly and such. I kept the scraps, and that was a really smart thing to do because I utilized them a lot. And then I made the headers using the same technique I did for the monthly log for the events and finances tracker, with the gray and then the gold outlines. At first I put in some lace washi, but I really didn't like that, so I took that off and replaced it with a piece of ripped script paper, glued the header in, and then we will come back later to add some nail art or like small rose stickers to the letters. And I did a big frame with inner rounded corners that has been a feature in this setup, and I outlined it with gray and then went over it with gold. And then we will do the other side for the bingo board, so starting with putting down the red rose stickers and then a piece of the script washi and then the header, then also replicating the border as well. So each month I like to add an extra spread, and for February I really like adding a self-care bingo. So that's what I did for her. I also do that for me. So I did the border in gray and then outlined it in gold. So now I'm using the small gray/black rose stickers on the header, and I had so much of this that I almost put it on every individual letter. And then I used the same nail art gold stickers to do the headers of the review. I have 6 here, but because it's such a tedious process, we have some editing magic. I ended up adding the sections highlights, challenges, accomplished, gratitude, finances, and then favorites. I also used some small sprig stickers before each header. As for the self-care bingo, I started with using the few extra rose stickers that I had left on the header, just for each section of the word, so the S, the C, and the B. And then for the actual bingo, I blocked the area with washi tape. I ended up somehow putting paint beyond that washi tape, so it didn't do anything good, unfortunately. But the idea is the bingo board itself would be that deep maroon red. So I started with that. I actually did section it first into 9, so it's a 3x3 bingo board, and then I colored each box individually but also blending in between. It was a really lengthy process trying to make it look even and nice, but once I was done with that and discovered that I actually messed up and had some red paint on areas that shouldn't have red paint, because it's watercolor, I tried to lift most of it with clean water and a clean brush and wiping it. That ended up working for the top, and I ended up adding a piece of script washi or paper there, and it covered it. But where the header is and where everything is glued, that didn't really work, so I tried to cover it with some stickers, and it did not end up looking the neatest, but it's not too noticeable, and at that point I couldn't do anything about it, so I kept it. It is what it is. Here I'm just putting white paint to cover some of the pink that ended up happening because of the mess up. So I outlined the red box with the gold, and then, you know, re-outlined the sections and outlined that with the gold as well. But then to actually write the prompts, I used a newly acquired metallic gold pen that I felt matched the gold watercolor and the gold letters pretty well. And I don't remember what I wrote exactly for the prompts. I tried to add some fun ones, easy ones, and ones I thought my friend would like to do or would do. Feel free to pause and sneak a peek and use that for inspo if you would like. With that, we reach the end of this video. This is the setup for February completed in Project B, doing a dark romantic rose theme with black and red roses. This was very stressful, but the end result is beautiful. There's a lot of elements, you know, stickers and paper colors and burnt edges and lace and script and a lot of things, as I've said, but it looks really, really nice. But definitely not what the original idea was about. Anyway, my friend liked it and I'm really glad. I thought she's gonna hate it. Stay tuned for more setups in Project B. I promise the future themes are a lot more well put together than this one. Check the playlist for previous videos and subscribe for my own setups as well. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.